This happened about a week ago. I was 34, just laid off. I needed money, so I took a job at an old factory on the edge of town. I heard it had a weird reputation, but I was desperate. The factory was built in the 1940s. It had rusted machines and dim lights. Shadows crept along the concrete floors. I brushed off the whispers about workers leaving, thinking they were just stories. On my second night shift, I found an old tool on a workbench. It looked antique, almost glowing, and was free of dust. I picked it up, and a chill raced through my fingers. It felt wrong, like it didn't want to be touched. I dismissed it, blaming the cold air, but the feeling nagged at me. By the third night, things got weirder. I was at the back of the factory when I heard laughter. It wasn't loud, just a faint echo, but it echoed off the walls. I turned around, looking for someone, but there was no one there, just empty machines. My heart started pounding. I looked for my coworkers later, wanting to share what I heard, but they just laughed at me. On the fourth night, the lights began flickering. It felt as if they were playing games, turning on and off. Each aisle I walked down dimmed, then brightened as I passed. I felt cold and alone. I tried to convince myself it was just old wiring, but it felt like something was watching. In the break room, I told my coworkers about it. They chuckled, saying I was imagining things. Maybe I was, but doubt crept in. By the fifth night, I was sweeping near the front when I felt a presence behind me. I turned around, and no one was there, yet the air felt thick and heavy. I took a step back, my heart racing. It was like I heard a whisper near my ear, but when I looked, there was nothing. I felt uneasy. I needed to get out. Standing by the exit, I saw the tool again. It gleamed under the lights. I hesitated, staring at it. Maybe it was all in my head, but something held my attention. I backed away slowly. Then I heard it, a soft echo of laughter. It seemed to come from everywhere. I knew I wasn't imagining it. As I turned to leave, something cold grazed my neck. I spun around, my heart racing. I looked everywhere, but there was just silence. My skin crawled. I didn't want to be there anymore. I bolted for the door, desperate to escape that place. When I got outside, I could still hear the laughter in my head, soft and sinister. I couldn't shake the chill running through me. I don't think I'll ever forget those nights. The factory loomed behind me, dark and grim, filled with secrets I wasn't meant to know. The next evening, I found myself pacing in my small apartment. I didn't want to go back to that factory, but I needed the money. I reminded myself that it was just an old building, and I convinced myself the stories couldn't be true. Still, when I drove toward the factory, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. As I entered, the oppressive atmosphere wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off my nerves. The factory was alive with the hum of machines, but the vibes felt different tonight, tense and eerie. I clocked in and made my way to the assembly line, keeping my head down. A couple of hours passed without incident, just the sounds of machines clanging and whirring. I started to relax, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. But then I remembered the laughter. It played like a broken record in my mind. I shivered, pushing it to the back of my mind. Midway through the shift, I needed a break. I wandered to the back where I heard the laughter that first night. I peered around the empty aisles, searching if anyone else was nearby. Everything was still. As I turned to head back, I noticed something on the floor. There, partially hidden beside a crate, was an old photograph. I picked it up. The edges were frayed, and the image was faded, but I could make out a group of workers standing proudly in front of the factory. They looked happy, smiling broadly. But as I studied the faces, a chill went down my spine. I felt like one of them was staring right at me. His eyes seemed to bore into my soul. I dropped the photo, heart pounding. What was I doing? Why did I even pick it up? I glanced down the aisle towards the exit. A quick rush of fear filled me that I should leave, but something compelled me to stay. I took a step, needing to know more about the faces in the photo. I backed away and noticed the wall behind me. It felt cold like the tool from before. I heard a creak and then a whisper carried through the air. "Help us." My breath caught in my throat. I turned, heart racing, but there was nobody there. A feeling of dread washed over me, and I fought the urge to flee. Instead, I remembered the tool, the only thing that felt somehow connected. I needed to find it. I hurried to the workbench where I found it before, but came up empty. My hands trembled as I searched. That strange piece of metal had to be there. But all I found were rusty tools and half-finished projects. Then I heard it. The laughter again, louder and closer, swirling around me. Panic surged as I felt the temperature drop, and I could see my breath in the cold air. I glanced around, desperate to see who was there. That's when I saw it. An outline in the shadows darting between the machines. "What do you
"Want?" I shouted, my voice shaking. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. The laughter faded, leaving behind an unsettling quiet. I felt a presence. Something was lurking, teasing me. My gut screamed to run, but I couldn't. I waited, heart racing, unsure of what might come next. Would I find answers or only deeper questions? Just then, the lights flickered above me, plunging me into darkness. The darkness wrapped around me like a shroud. I strained my eyes, but I could see nothing. The machinery fell silent, leaving only the pounding of my heart and the faint echo of my own breath. I groped around, trying to find my way back to the main aisle. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, revealing the factory in its eerie stillness. My pulse quickened as I looked around, half expecting a figure to jump out at me. But there was nothing, just the empty space filled with shadows. I took a shaky breath, trying to regain my composure. That's when I noticed something on the ground near the toolbox. A glint of metal caught the light, my missing tool. I hurried over to it, grasping the familiar cold handle. It felt heavier than I remembered. As I examined it closer, I noticed strange engravings on the side. They looked like symbols I had never seen before. "Get it together," I whispered to myself. I couldn't let my imagination run wild. Maybe the factory was just playing tricks on me, trying to freak me out. I tightened my grip on the tool and turned back towards the assembly line, ready to put my head down and finish my shift. But as I walked back, I heard it again, the laughter. This time it was joined by whispers. "Come play with us." My heart skipped a beat. The sound wrapped around me like the chill in the air, filling me with dread. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing there. I quickened my pace, focusing on the light above my workstation as my only guide. My mind raced. If I kept working, maybe the fear would go away. Maybe I could prove to myself that none of this was real. I reached my station and tried to drown out the sounds around me, forcing myself to concentrate. Just as I began, the lights flickered off again. The machinery groaned to life, rattling in a low, unsettling tone. Instinctively, I crouched down, my eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The laughter returned, now echoing through the factory walls. It was joined by something else, a soft, rhythmic thumping, like a heartbeat. As the sound grew louder, I felt the ground begin to vibrate beneath my feet. I needed to get out. I stood up abruptly and started making my way toward the exit. I could see an emergency light glowing faintly at the door. I pushed aside my fear as I sprinted through the aisles, my footsteps echoing around me. Then I stopped cold. In front of me stood the figure, the one I had glimpsed earlier in the shadows. It was tall and gaunt, an outline of what looked almost human. Its eyes were hollow, shining like dark pools. I couldn't see a face, but I felt it watching me. "Help us," it whispered, echoing the words I heard before. I stepped back in terror, my breath hitching in my throat. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The figure advanced slowly, feet sliding across the factory floor, a smile creeping across its featureless face. The laughter surrounded me again, echoing in my mind. And that's when I realized this was no longer just about the factory. It was about something deeper, something I had stumbled into. As the figure stretched out a hand toward me, the lights flickered once more, plunging me into darkness again. I was left with one horrifying thought. There was no escaping this. I stumbled backward as blackness engulfed me. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to run, my hand brushing against the cold metal of machinery as I dashed through the darkness. Panic surged through me, and every creak of the factory amplified my fear. I fumbled ahead, desperate to find the faint glowing emergency light I had spotted earlier. Just then, the lights flashed back on, momentarily blinding me. When my vision cleared, I saw that the figure was gone. My heart raced, but I forced myself to look around. The factory hadn't changed. It was still the same unnerving place, filled with shadows and haunting echoes. Yet now, it felt even more hostile. Gathering my thoughts, I trudged back to my workstation. The engravings on my tool tugged at my mind. I needed to examine them. I laid the tool out, squinting at the symbols. They looked ancient, uncertain, like a language I'd never known. My hand shook as I traced one with my finger. It was cold to the touch, colder than it had any right to be. Then the laughter returned, nearer this time. My throat tightened as I realized it was coming from all around me. "Come play with us," they sang, sounding childlike yet hollow. I gripped the tool tighter, scanning the area for the source of the laughter, but I only saw flickering lights and shadows. I glanced toward the assembly line. Movement caught my eye. Beyond the conveyor belt, something shifted. I strained to see, but then the lights flickered again, plunging me into darkness. I felt suspended in time, paralyzed by fear. The laughter morphed into something sinister, like a chant, building crescendo. Suddenly, the lights blared back on. A shadow darted past my periphery. I spun around, my pulse racing. A child stood at the edge of the shadows, a little girl, her hair disheveled and face pale. I stumbled back, terror washing over me. "Help us," she whispered, just like the figure had. My throat went dry, panic clouded. Thoughts flooded my mind. Why were they asking for help? Who were they? I looked around, searching for any sign of an adult, but the factory was empty. "Please, they want to play," she said, stepping closer. The smile on her face didn't reach her eyes. They held a darkness I couldn't comprehend. My instincts screamed to run, and I almost did, but something forced me to stay. "What do you mean?" I managed to croak out. "Join the game," she replied, her voice echoing. The shadows around her flickered, revealing more children. Shapes inching closer, faces hidden but eyes trained on me. Their laughter rose and fell, an unsettling symphony growing louder, drowning out the factory's hum. I backed away slowly, hands shaking. In their wild expressions, I saw desperation. I realized that this place was not just haunted. The kids, if they were kids, were trapped here, bound to the factory like shadows. An overwhelming fear gripped me as the reality sank in. They wanted me to become part of this torment. Then everything went dark again. The air felt electric, like a storm about to burst. I held my breath, and the last thing I heard was the chorus of laughter swelling around me. I knew I had to escape, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground. And just then, I heard a whisper in my ear, softer than the laughter. "You can't leave." The darkness slurped around me like a thick fog. I could sense the children's presence, but no matter how hard I strained my eyes, I couldn't see any of them. I forced my legs to move, each step feeling heavier than the last, my heart still pounding in my chest. The laughter had stopped, replaced by a silence that felt oppressive, crawling beneath my skin. I needed to get out. I turned back towards the way I had come, but every shadow seemed to shift as I moved, blurring my sense of direction. I could hear the rhythmic clank of machinery echoing through the factory's vastness, providing an unsettling backdrop to my racing thoughts. The emergency light flickered above me, illuminating the grimy floor and the rusted machinery that loomed like dormant giants. I approached my earlier position, my hands trembling. The engravings on the tool were calling to me. If I could just understand them, maybe they held the answers. Maybe they were the key to this nightmare. As I gathered the courage to reach for the tool, a shape darted in my peripheral vision. Instinctively, I spun around, but nothing was there. Just shadows and the echo of the factory's vast emptiness. My heart sank deeper into my stomach. This wasn't just fear. It was the feeling of being hunted. I decided to head towards the closest exit. I couldn't stay. Each step felt like a bet against the malicious laughter echoing in my ears. As I pushed through an aisle of neglected machinery, I began to remember the old stories I had heard about this factory. Tales of lost workers, muffled cries, and children who wandered too far. Then a sudden chill washed over me. I turned sharply, expecting to see one of the children again. Instead, I faced a half-open door. A flickering light surged from within, beckoning. I hesitated, curiosity battling my instinct to run. What if there were answers? What if it wasn't just another trap? I stepped closer to the door, the dim light revealing a narrow room stacked with old files and photographs. Whispers danced along the edge of my consciousness, but I couldn't decipher the words. However, there was something about a poster on the wall that caught my eye. It depicted a group of children, smiling and playing, with a large sign that read, "Welcome to New Horizons." Underneath were dates corresponding to the years the factory operated, with one particular year marked in red, 1984. My stomach twisted. That was the last year a child went missing. As I peeled the edges of the poster back, I noticed something stuck behind it. It was a small journal, dusty and worn. I pulled it free, desperate for any clues. My hand shook as I opened it. The entries were scrawled in messy handwriting, punctuated by drawings of children playing. But the last entry made my breath hitch. "They're coming. They'll take you too if you don't play. I can't stay much longer." Before I could process it, the factory lights shattered into darkness again. A heavy presence loomed behind me, chilling my spine. "You can't leave," echoed a familiar voice, childlike, but now sharper, more predatory. With a surge of adrenaline, I bolted for the door, clutching the journal to my chest. My only thought was escape. But the factory wasn't finished with me yet. I slammed the door behind me, stumbling into the narrow hallway. Panic surged through me, pushing my feet forward, but my mind was racing. The laughter that had once floated through the factory was now replaced by a persistent ringing in my ears. I had to get away. The journal felt heavy in my hands, a reminder of all that I had just seen. As I dashed through the maze of machinery, the rhythmic clanks morphed into a cacophony of noises. Each sound echoed off the walls, disorienting me. I glanced back, half expecting to see shadows chasing me. Just emptiness. I could make out the dim exit sign far ahead, a single salvation in the oppressive dark. Each step was fueled by desperation. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated behind me, followed by frantic whispers. I froze. The kids' voices returned, but now they sounded angry, convinced that I was intruding. My thoughts raced. What had I gotten myself into? Ignoring the instinct to look back, I pushed myself to go faster. The exit seemed to ripple in the dim light. I could almost taste freedom. Then something darted across my path, a flash of white, like a ghostly figure. I screamed, barely stifling it as I swerved to avoid whatever it was. My heart raced even faster now. Finally, I reached the door. I pushed on it, but it didn't budge. My panic boiled over. I could hear them coming closer, their whispers now layered with sinister laughter. I tried to shake the door, but it held firm. I stepped back, my pulse pounding in my throat. Taking a deep breath, I scanned my surroundings. That's when I saw it, an old fire extinguisher on the wall. I grabbed it, feeling its weight as I swung it against the door. The first hit barely made a dent, but the second sent a jarring echo through the hallway. I kept striking, determination overriding my fear. Finally, with one last forceful attempt, the door burst open. I charged outside, the cool air hitting me like a splash of cold water. But my relief was short-lived. The parking lot was empty, a desolate stretch that seemed to stretch into infinity. A distant light flickered at the far end. I dashed towards it, praying it wasn't another trick. As I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Each breath I took was heavy with the weight of the unseen eyes watching me from the factory's depths. The laughter had quieted, but I could feel it lurking, ready to echo back to life at any moment. When I reached the flickering light, I realized it was just an old lamp illuminating a cracked concrete wall. Despair sunk in, and I turned back. That's when I noticed a shadow moving by the factory's entrance. I squinted, trying to make out the figure. It was a child, pale and thin, standing completely still. "Help us," the child whispered, and suddenly the urge to flee was replaced by an impulse to turn back. But why would I help? They hadn't been friendly before. Then the laughter surged again behind me, louder and more chaotic. I was caught between two choices: the horrifying unknown in the factory or the unsettling child beckoning me. I took a shaky step toward the figure, fear mixing with a strange compulsion. Before I could think further, the child grinned, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too wrong. I felt my stomach drop. "What have I done?" I whispered to myself, knowing I was in bigger trouble than I had ever anticipated. I was frozen, staring at the child. Remnants of horror clawed at my brain, while instinct screamed at me to run. But that grin, filled with sharp, glistening teeth, held me captive. I stepped back, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The child tilted their head, as if pondering my question. The laughter from the factory grew louder, each peal more sinister than the last. "Help us," the child repeated, but this time with a tone that sounded more like a command than a plea. With each word, the air around me felt heavier. I could feel the cool night breeze on my skin, but it didn't help ease the chill creeping down my spine. "What do you mean?" I shouted back, desperation creeping into my voice. "Help you with what?" The child's expression warped momentarily, morphing into something sinister. My throat tightened, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Suddenly, the factory door swung open behind me. I turned, instinctively pulling myself away from the child. The entrance was a dark maw, the laughter spilling out into the night like a tide. Frantic whispers filled the air, rising and falling like an anguished chorus. I had to make a choice: face whatever was lurking in the factory or confront this child, whatever they truly were. I could almost feel the pull of the factory, the stories its walls whispered, trying to drag me back. The air around me buzzed with anticipation. "Don't go back," the child pleaded, their voice suddenly far more urgent. "They'll take you. They take everyone." For a moment, something in their eyes flickered with a spark of genuine fear. My heart raced, torn between the strange being before me and the horrors hidden in the shadows behind. I took a step closer to the child, blurring the line between curiosity and fear. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice trembling. The laughter crescendoed behind me, drowning out my question. I could feel the presence of something gathering, unseen yet palpable, like a storm on the horizon. Then I saw it, a figure emerging from the factory, hawking and distorted, a silhouette of twisted limbs and wild hair. My gut twisted in response, and every instinct screamed at me to run. "Go!" the child yelled, pushing me back toward the parking lot. I stumbled, fear pounding in my ears. It was a moment of pure instinct. I turned and fled. The child's warning echoed in my mind, but all I could see was the monstrous figure advancing, its movements unnatural and jerky. I sprinted, legs burning, heart racing, praying the darkness wouldn't consume me. As I crossed the threshold of the parking lot, I glanced back. The figure paused at the door, and for a fleeting second our eyes met. There were no lips to form a smile, but I could feel a malicious delight radiating from it. I ran beyond the reach of that flickering light, the factory becoming a dark silhouette against the night sky. My mind raced, grappling with what I had witnessed. I had escaped one nightmare, but there was still the child. Who were they? What was this thing that haunted the factory? The darkness around me shifted, and I turned once more. I had to find answers, but deep down, I knew I was already drawn back into a web I might never escape. As the laughter faded into a haunting memory, I steeled myself. I would have to go back. I had to uncover the truth. That's when I heard the whisper. Again, just behind me. You can't run from what you don't understand. The next morning, I woke up in a cold sweat. The sun barely peeked through the curtains, but its pale light felt harsh against my skin. My mind was still trapped in the images of the child and the monstrous figure. I had to know more about the factory, about the child, and about whatever lurked within those walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that the answer lay right in front of me. I grabbed my phone and began researching the factory. Old news articles filled the screen. It was built decades ago and had a dark history. Failures, accidents, and rumors of disappearances. My stomach twisted as I read. One article caught my eye. The vanishing workers of Carter and Sons. The factory had a reputation for an unusually high number of missing employees. Several had vanished without a trace, their stories buried under an avalanche of indifference. I couldn't dismiss the coincidences anymore. I thought of the child's warning. I decided to visit the factory again, but I needed a plan. My heart raced at the thought of going back inside, but I was determined. I had to confront whatever haunted those halls. As I approached the factory, the air felt thick with tension. The building loomed over me, its cracked facade resisting the advance of time. The laughter and whispers from last night seemed to linger, taunting me. Hesitation clawed at my gut, but I pushed through. I entered through a side door. The smell of rust and decay hit me like a wall. I could hear the faint hum of machinery running somewhere deeper inside. My steps echoed loudly in the silence. With each step, the shadows seemed to stretch and twitch as if alive. I felt eyes on me. "Help us." The child's voice echoed in my mind. I pressed forward, searching for any sign of them. Suddenly, the sound of clanging metal jolted me from my thoughts. My heart dropped. I turned and saw a shadow dart around the corner. "Is anyone there?" I called, my voice trembling. No response. I felt a chill creep up my spine and moved cautiously. The shadows danced in the corner of my vision, and I spotted movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, and there he was, the child. They stood in the hallway ahead, out of reach. Their face was obscured, but I could see that familiar grin, sharper than before. "Why are you here?" the child asked, their voice softer yet more unsettling. "You shouldn't have come back." "I need to understand," I insisted, taking a step closer. "What's happening here?" The child shivered, their expression darkening. "They will take you, just like they took the others." My heart sank at the gravity of their words. "You have to leave."
But before I could respond, a loud crash echoed through the factory. I turned toward the sound. The air shifted around me.
I felt a force surge from the darkness beyond, sending papers flying and debris scattering. I felt a force surge from the darkness beyond, almost pulling me backward. That's when I saw it, an outline in the blackness, a grotesque figure emerging from the shadows. Panic surged within me, and as I turned to run, I realized the child was no longer there. "Get out, now!" they had screamed, but I was already racing toward the door, heart pounding. I had gone too far, and the realization hit hard. Whatever I had come to understand was far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. Behind me, the laughter began to build, echoing my growing dread. I stumbled out of the factory, gasping for air as the cool breeze hit my face. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The laughter echoed in my ears, a haunting reminder of what lay within those walls. I had to get away, but a part of me knew I couldn't just leave it behind. I found myself at a nearby diner, trying to calm my racing thoughts. As I sipped my coffee, I glanced at the newspaper on the counter. It featured a story about the factory. There were names of those who had vanished. I narrowed my eyes as I recognized one. It was a name I'd read in those articles, Anna Miller. She was listed as one of the most recent disappearances. Then it hit me. I knew her, I muttered, memories flooding back. Anna had been a classmate. We were never close, but I remembered her bright smile and laughter. What had happened to her? I couldn't just sit and wonder. I needed answers. That evening, I returned home, feeling restless. I dug into Anna's disappearance, contacting mutual friends from school. Each conversation added weight to my chest. No one knew what happened, just that she had vanished. The factory was always mentioned in hushed tones, as if it had a life of its own. A couple of days passed uneasily, and I couldn't ignore the pull of the factory any longer. I found myself back at the entrance, flashlight in hand. This time I felt different. A mix of fear and determination coursed through me. I had to know if Anna was linked to the child. Inside, the air was stifling. Silence weighed heavily, interrupted only by the occasional drip of water. I crept deeper, looking for clues. Memories of the child's warning resonated louder in my mind, but I pushed them aside. As I wandered, an old photograph caught my eye. It was pinned to the wall. I stepped closer. A group of factory workers smiled back at me, Anna right in the center. My heart raced. It was dated years before her disappearance. It felt like a portal to the past, intertwining with the present. Just then, I heard a low growl from the shadows. Frozen, I slowly turned my head. The grotesque figure from before was back, lurking near the basilisk. Machinery. It was closer this time. The growl intensified, rumbling through the air. I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, the figure lunged, and I sprinted down the hall, adrenaline surging through my veins. The laughter resumed, mocking the chaos as I bolted toward the exit. Just before reaching the door, something cold grabbed my ankle. I screamed and jerked free, stumbling into the open space outside. I took a moment to gather myself, breathless under the fading light. I realized I needed to return, but this time with a plan. I had to find Anna, but it was clear the factory had its own even darker intentions. The laughter faded, but a new sound emerged as I caught my breath, a faint whisper, too familiar to ignore. "Help us." It was the child's voice again, calling from the depths of the factory. The urgency in their tone sent chills down my spine. I had to go back. I had to confront not only the factory, but whatever held the child and Anna captive.
Something primal urged me to step into the darkness once more. I stood at the entrance of the factory, the memories of those unsettling nights flooding my mind. The whispers, the laughter, the cold grip that had once ensnared me. Everything pointed to one truth. I had to unearth the mysteries sealed within these walls. Little did I know that one last encounter awaited me. As soon as I stepped inside, the heavy silence draped over me like a shroud. The air smelled damp and stale, clutching at my lungs. I had come prepared this time, a flashlight in one hand, the journal in the other. The child's voice echoed in my mind, urging me forward. Help us. I followed the familiar path down the aisles, past the decaying machines that had borne witness to countless lost souls. The faint hum of electrical buzzing filled the air as I approached that grotesque figure. It loomed large in my mind, a monstrous reminder of the danger within. Deep in my gut, I felt an urge to confront it, to find out what it genuinely wanted. As I ventured deeper, the cold returned, chilling me to the bone. Shadows danced and flickered, whispering secrets I could barely grasp. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured Anna's face. I had to find her. Guided by instinct, I sidestepped wreckage and debris until I reached the small room where I found the journal last time. I pulled it from my bag and began flipping through the pages, desperate to find connection, a clue, anything that could guide me. The child's warning blared in my mind, but I focused on deciphering the last line. They'll take you too if you don't play. At that moment, the lights flickered overhead. The air thickened as I felt something shift behind me. It's coming, I thought, panic clutching my chest. But I resisted the urge to flee. Instead, I turned to face.
The darkness, demanding answers. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was the child. Their pale face was etched with anxiety, eyes wide but barely visible in the dim light. "You shouldn't have come back," they murmured, voice trembling. "Where's Anna?" I asked, desperation spilling into my tone. "Tell me what happened to her." "Help us." The child's expression twisted, sadness morphing to something deeper, a shared fear. "You don't understand. We can't leave." Before I could wrap my head around the revelation, the laughter rippled through the air, and the twisted figure I'd seen before moved forward. It was just as terrifying as I remembered, its unnatural gait matched by a hollow grin. "Find the game," it rasped, fingers elongated and gnarled. "Play with us." The child shrieked, "No, don't!" But I felt an inexplicable pull, something primal and sinister gripping my core. Heart thundering, I felt the factory shake beneath me. It wanted me to join whatever otherworldly game it played. I sprinted, not toward the figure, but deeper into the dark corners of the factory, past rusted machines and twisted shadows, hoping that a hint of truth lay hidden within. Then I spotted it, a familiar poster, "Welcome to New Horizons," flapping against the wall, eerily untouched by time. The fading children's smiles seemed to beckon. I ripped it off, searching behind it to find the journal's details I had overlooked. "A game, a promise," I read, tracing the words. The chill in my bones struck hard. Those kids weren't just trapped. They were bound to the factory's sinister legacy. Before I could react, the lights flickered violently, plunging me into darkness again. I felt the child's hand grasp mine, then let go abruptly. A cacophony of laughter filled the void, drowning out my thoughts. I was spun around, facing the grotesque figure once more. "It's your turn," it growled, teeth glinting in the dark. Just as I readied to flee, the child's voice pierced through the confusion. "Play the game and free us! Break the cycle or join us forever!" My mind swirled with a million thoughts, fear battling resolve. I turned to face the figure. "No, I won't play your game!"
A deafening roar erupted as the figure lunged, but in that instant I smashed the journal against the tool that had drawn me here in the first place. The engravings glowed with a sudden warmth, illuminating the darkness around me. The laughter twisted into screams as the shadows recoiled. "No!" the figure writhed, the children's desperate wails merging with the chaos. As the light from the tool expanded, everything flooded with overwhelming brightness, blinding me. I felt heat washing over me, drowning out fear. Then, in a heartbeat, darkness reclaimed the room. When the light receded, the atmosphere felt lighter, almost tranquil. I dropped to my knees, heart racing as I glanced around the empty space. It was silent. No laughter, no whispers. I had escaped, but at what cost? Panic surged as I scrambled to my feet, desperate to
find the child or any trace of Anna, but nothing stirred. The shadows felt different now, almost mournful, a far cry from the maliciousness that once enveloped me. I stumbled outside, gasping for air, vision blurred as the factory stood behind me like a mausoleum, its secrets sealed once again. But questions remained, racing endlessly through my mind. Had I truly freed them? Were Anna and the child now liberated or forever bound to those cursed walls? The factory loomed, dark and silent, whispering secrets and lingering echoes of what had transpired. As I drove away, my heart heavy yet relieved, I couldn't shake the feeling that some doors, once opened, could never truly close. I glanced in the rearview mirror, just for a moment. The shadows of the factory appeared to writhe in the fading twilight, leaving me with the lingering doubt that the game had merely shifted, waiting for someone else to step inside.